Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Medelis and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. Got a lot to get to in today's edition of Border Report Live. The biggest news of the day, our continuing coverage on the New World screwworm. I'm getting some news into our stream center here in Harlingen, Texas, literally as I was coming on the air. So I'm going to go jump around just a little bit. So I apologize in advance if it's hard to stay with me, but I promise we will wrap this all up for you before we move on to the next story. So earlier today, 2 more cases of the New World screwworm had been confirmed here in the state of Texas. Now, the U.S. Department of Agriculture announced earlier that the new cases were found in a calf and a dog 100 miles apart. I'll show you a map. This is a real-time map of the situation as of earlier today, I should say, that we have up for you on borderreport.com. Now, the first case of that calf was found down here in LaSalle County. That's highlighted on your screen there. You can see one cattle that was affected there. All the way up here in Andrews County was that second case that we were talking about that came out today. You can see right there that was in a dog that, according to the USDA, had recently been in Mexico. The reports are still early on the situation with that dog, but it had recently spent time south of the border. Now, since we put this map together earlier today for borderreport.com, we've had some changes. Literally, as I was telling you, just in the last few moments, we just got new information from the U.S. Department of Agriculture that there have been 3 additional cases of the New World screwworm across the southwestern United States, 2 of them in Texas, and 1 is actually in New Mexico. So that is the 5th case overall. So that dog, according to the USDA, has been reclassified as the first case detected in New Mexico because the veterinarian who reported the case is located in Texas, but the dog resides at a household in Lee County, New Mexico, which borders Texas. That means we have to make a second map now with the second state that's affected. We will get on top of that, and we'll have that for you in the coming hours. But again, so back to the Texas cases that we know of. The 4th case, the second case that happened here, aside from that calf here in Texas, was actually in Gillespie County earlier today, according to the USDA, and that was found in a goat. So for those of you wondering where Gillespie County is, its county seat of Gillespie County is the city of Fredericksburg. It's a well-known town to a vacation destination within the state of Texas, and it's about 80 miles west of the city of Austin. So if you look, I'll take you back to this map right here so I can kind of give you an idea. This is today, that first case of the calf being infected that we told you about up here in Austin. Just about right here is Gillespie County, where you see my mouse pointer there on your screen, just about 2 counties over from where you see Austin sitting. This case up here in Andrews County has since been moved right across the border to Lee County in New Mexico, and right now that is the current situation. Now, for those of you that are just joining us, the screwworm is actually a fly, which produces a larva that you see there on your screen that eats live flesh instead of dead material. Females lay their eggs in open wounds in any warm-blooded animals, such as cattle, but wildlife, pets, as we just discussed, and even humans can be infested by this screwworm fly. It's not common for a human to be infested, but it can happen. Now, before it was eradicated in the 1960s, the fly was an annual warm weather problem for cattle ranchers. The return of the fly is causing anxiety among those ranchers across the country. Here in South Texas, everyone is on high alert right now. While state and federal officials continue their response, local cattle producers say early detection and quick reporting will be critical to keeping that fly from spreading. Reporter Jorge Vela spoke with ranchers here in the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas who are already changing their daily routines. Take a look.
The threat of the New World screwworm is no longer just a headline. The owner of La Muñeca Ranch in Lynn, Victor Guerra, says producers are paying closer attention than ever to their herds.
I think the more reporting we have and the quicker we get that to the experts, the quicker we'll be able to combat the screwworm.
Guerra recently attended a briefing with livestock producers where officials emphasized the importance of reporting suspected cases immediately. He says producers were told response teams could arrive within 72 hours to investigate potential cases.
They emphasized the need for us producers to report without having any fear of any sort of quarantine or anything of that matter, because that will be the most effective manner.
With screwworms targeting open wounds, Guerra says his crew is already stepping up inspections.
We've got a lot of low-hanging brush on our ranch, and so the increased chance of those cattle getting cut or having lesions, that what the screwworm's looking for. So we're going to be analyzing not only the cow herd, but especially the calves, any newborn calves that we might be having, to make sure that they're 100% healthy. And so our morning checks are going to be a lot more thorough.
In Willacy County, ranchers say that smaller operations and mostly grassland makes it easier to keep an eye on cattle and also to spray for flies.
It's a little bit more input, for our costs, but it's not a whole lot more labor. We can do that in 10 minutes while they're eating, so it's not a big deal to us.
Christopher Lapham owns Lapham's Lone Star Ranch. He says his operation has also added extra preventive measures, including regular spray treatments and even free-range chickens to help reduce fly populations.
They'll go through and they'll scratch through those manure piles and they'll eat larvae and different things.
But his biggest concern isn't necessarily livestock, it's South Texas wildlife. Lapham says deer and nilgai are much harder to monitor, and an outbreak in those populations could have consequences.
If they start getting infested in those areas, that could have a big impact on our recreational hunting and other things like that.
For now, ranchers say vigilance, communication, and early reporting will be their best defense against the pests. From BC23 from FAR, I'm Jorge Vela.
U.S. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins is in Texas as we speak, Kerrville, Texas, specifically meeting with members of the cattle industry. She also announced the appointment of John Bellinger as the new senior advisor for New World screwworm preparedness. She says Bellinger will integrate into the USDA's team to help track the fly. Bellinger has been involved in the beef and cattle industry for several years. We've stayed on top of this for you on Border Report Live for well over a year now, and we will continue our coverage and bring you the latest as we get it, as we track the spread of the New World screwworm across the southwestern United States. The Trump administration on Monday said they plan to announce they're seeking to revoke the citizenship of 17 U.S. citizens accused of immigration fraud. According to CBS News, the Justice Department officials said the move represents the largest ever effort by U.S. government to use its denaturalization powers, which were rarely invoked before President Trump returned to the White House last year. Federal law has long allowed the government to try to denaturalize foreign-born U.S. citizens who officials believe committed fraud to obtain their citizenship. The Trump administration has sought to vastly escalate denaturalization efforts as part of its larger crackdown on illegal and legal immigration. Last month, officials announced a dozen denaturalization cases, at the time the largest effort in years. Some of the 17 citizens targeted in the latest denaturalization campaign were convicted of violent or serious crimes, including sex offenses against children. Others were convicted of fraud crimes or accused of committing immigration fraud. A group of protesters waved signs outside an unmarked facility in Edinburgh, Texas on Friday. Border Report has been told that this is a secret holding facility operated by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It is possibly one of many across the United States. About 20 people gathered outside the building here in the Rio Grande Valley. Organizers say the public needs to know where migrants are being housed in our communities. Ninfa Martinez was among those protesting. She says her father was held there, and she tracked his phone to this location before he was moved to 2 other facilities in the Rio Grande Valley and then deported to Mexico 3 weeks ago. He'd been in the United States since 2005 and was arrested for driving without any documents. She says the worst part is they didn't know where he was.
So we were confused as to why somebody would be behind a coffee shop when they're supposed to be in detention or at least being proceeded in a facility. So that was a little bit confusing. We drove by. As you can tell, there's no signage. I feel like it's important for people to know that your tax dollars are being used without you knowing what they're being used for.
The American Immigration Council says ICE operates over 100 undisclosed secret holding facilities nationwide. In a statement to Border Report, ICE officials verified that this location is holding migrants, saying, quote, The ICE Edinburgh sub-office is a processing facility, not a detention facility. Illegal aliens are quickly processed and transferred to permanent housing at a detention facility. Protests continued outside an immigration detention center in Newark, New Jersey over the weekend. Protesters and federal agents clashed again at the Delaney Hall ICE detention facility. For more than 2 weeks, demonstrations outside the center have intensified, with confrontations between activists and law enforcement becoming a near daily occurrence. On Friday, at least 2 additional protesters were taken into custody outside the facility. Overall, dozens of people have been arrested since the demonstrations began. Many of those arrests occurred after officials imposed a temporary curfew around Delaney Hall as part of crowd control efforts. That curfew has since been lifted. After more than a decade, a legal fight over the Rio Grande's water rights in New Mexico is finally over after the United States Supreme Court signed off on an historic settlement. State leaders see this agreement as a big win for the state and residents who use the river. Bella Oleg has the story.
State leaders are calling this agreement a big win for New Mexico and believe it will provide certainty for southern New Mexicans who rely on the water flowing from this river.
The state retained all of its administrative capacity. We still will be administering water rights the way we always have. Texas is not telling us what to do with our water or what to do with our permitting process.
This comes after Texas sued New Mexico in 2013, claiming New Mexico was pumping more than its fair share of the groundwater along the Rio Grande. Now, under the settlement the states agreed to, the water rights are clearly divided. New Mexico gets 57% of the river, while Texas gets 43%. That will mean a slight reduction in the amount of water pumped from the lower Rio Grande, which extends from Elephant Butte Dam to the border between Texas and New Mexico, an area home to extensive pecan and chili farming. State engineer Elizabeth Anderson says for farmers and communities in southern New Mexico, there should still be enough water to go around.
The overall amount of reduction is expected to be maybe 5 to 7%. Ultimately, that brings the system back into balance, which is really what we're seeking.
State officials say this agreement protects the state from billions of dollars in potential legal fights. They say now that there are clear rules in place, they can shift their focus from litigation and onto solutions. Bella Olage, KRQE News 13.
Stay with us. We're going to take a quick break, but when we return, more headlines on what's trending across the border. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, your host here in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. A federal judge has struck down a Trump administration policy that made it harder for immigrants from dozens of countries to enter and stay in the United States. The judge criticized the policy for putting immigrants' lives in indeterminate legal limbo and accused the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services of ignoring the law. The ruling is a victory for immigrants and their advocates who had seen processing come to an abrupt halt, a pause that threatened to push some immigrants in the country legally on time, limited visas to overstay the bounds of their status. The administration continues to move ahead with border security construction projects along the Texas-Mexico border. But as News Nation's Allie Bradley tells us, some residents are pushing back on those border wall plans.
Yeah, the battle isn't over whether or not the border should be secure, but rather what residents say they're being asked to give up in the process. Yeah, America voted for it. Now DHS is expanding the infrastructure along the U.S.-Mexico border, which includes infrastructure like new wall construction, vehicle barriers, and waterborne barriers planned for portions of the Rio Grande. Supporters say the projects are critical tools for deterring illegal crossings, disrupting smuggling routes, and improving agent safety. But in several border communities, residents and local leaders are raising concerns about how those projects could impact daily life, tourism, recreation, and access to public lands. In Laredo, opposition to new border wall construction has drawn criticism from local leaders who argue barriers along the Rio Grande could alter the city's historic riverfront and provide limited security benefits.
To me, it doesn't fulfill completely the border security issue, because that wall, I mean, we've seen throughout centuries, walls really don't work. They can go under them, they can climb over them, and the cartels are going to imagine anything possible to get through this wall. So that would be not precisely what that would be the only solution.
Farther west near Big Bend and Presidio, proposed barrier projects have sparked concerns from ranchers, conservation groups, and local officials worried about impacts to private property, tourism, and some of the most scenic stretches of the border. And now similar concerns are surfacing in parts of the Del Rio sector. CBP says it plans to begin installing waterborne barriers in the Rio Grande this month, while additional border wall construction is expected to follow later this year. Residents who live along portions of the river tell us that they're worried about the floating barriers, that they could obstruct views, limit access to areas used for fishing and recreation, and change the character of the river corridor.
With big orange balls. Yeah, it's like, no, that's other than like security, but like earlier, the way Border Patrol's on it, National Guard here, they protect us very well. And there's always going to be stragglers. They're going to figure out a way to get over them or around them, I think. And we're always going to have it, but they're going to ruin our little paradise, like, on that part.
Further west in the sector, others are raising concerns about vehicle barriers planned in the Comstock area, which would also stretch through the Seminole Canyon State Park and is slated to include a patrol road. Concern is that the project could interfere with access and change the character of the landscape. The local sheriff says no one really knows what to expect as these projects start to take shape. CBP says every border barrier project undergoes environmental and cultural reviews, public outreach, and coordination with state and federal agencies before construction begins. But here's the thing, the residents that we talk to say that they haven't been talked to by the federal government, that they haven't been reached out to, and they don't really know what to expect here, but they are frustrated that the projects are moving on in full steam ahead. In Del Rio, Allie Bradley for News Nation.
In opposition to more border walls is also upsetting residents in the tiny community of San Ignacio in Zapata County, Texas. They're upset over the recent clearing of lands along the Rio Grande. U.S. Customs and Border Protection plans to build border wall in that area, but residents say they weren't told about it. Our South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez traveled to San Ignacio and has their story.
Frank Briscoe owns a few parcels along the Rio Grande here in San Ignacio in western Zapata County. He's shocked by the land destruction and is worried about a popular birding and butterfly refuge located next to the cleared lands, which bring ecotourism to this small and historic community of 500.
There are 276 species that have been seen from right here, and that's almost half the bird species in Texas, maybe more, and almost a third of the bird species seen in the United States from right here.
Briscoe is an architectural conservator who preserves historic buildings like those here in San Ignacio, which was founded in 1830. He enjoys being on the Rio Grande and says nature is important to him.
I wanted a property overlooking the river, not a fence or a wall, but the river and a place I could bird from it.
Environmentalist Elsa Hull lives nearby and wants the bird and butterfly refuge preserved.
It's the only real green space in the town. People come out here to fish as well. Birders come from all over the world even to come see particular species that are only found along the Rio Grande Flyway, which we are in here.
Hull is part of the Laredo-based No Border Wall Coalition.
Over your left shoulder is a Border Patrol vehicle. How do you feel about having the Border Patrol here?
I feel like they are the invaders. I do not feel safe with them.
She has riverfront land nearby that is untouched so far.
They have not entered my property. I've got lots of signage letting them know they're not welcome.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection plans to build 108 miles of border wall in Zapata and neighboring Webb County and put in 154 miles of river buoys to stop illegal immigration. But the buoys bring other concerns.
The water pump for the town is right behind me. The concern is water is an issue here in South Texas. And will it continue to flow in the Rio Grande once the river buoys are put in and all the construction of the border wall is done?
Maxine Reveles is also with the No Border Wall Coalition and traveled from Laredo.
It keeps getting closer and closer, and a lot of people in Laredo don't think this is going to happen, or they think like it's no big deal if they do this, and look at the destruction.
We asked Border Patrol if they had permission to clear this land. In a statement, a CBP spokesperson said, quote, "In San Ignacio, Texas, the land currently being cleared by border wall contractors is owned by the U.S. International Boundary and Water Commission. CBP has coordinated with the U.S. IBWC to secure the necessary rights for these activities. CBP does not conduct any border wall construction activities on private property without the appropriate permissions or legal access." Frank Briscoe showed me his property deed that specifies where his land is located in relation to the river.
I think it's an ecological disaster. I think it's the destruction of the bird habitat in particular. I mean, all of that. I'm not happy about it at all.
In San Ignacio, Texas, Sandra Sanchez, Border Report.
Stay with us. More headlines after a quick break. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. Tamales are a staple in Hispanic households, whether they're made in the style of Mexico or Central America. They're delicious. And now home cooks in Colorado looking to make a little extra income now have fewer barriers to doing so thanks to a bill signed into law by the governor. Reporter Nate Belt explains the Tamale Act.
If you like home-cooked foods, the new Tamale Act is going to make it easier for the people who make them to get those to you, as well as provide a little bit more financial stability within the industry.
Maria Gonzalez says food and the Latino community go hand in hand.
Food is part of our culture.
Since launching Adelante Community Development with assistance like their food truck education program, many of her clients have grown their business specifically in the food industry.
We have been around for over 10 years, and we've launched over 8,400 Spanish-speaking Latino entrepreneurs in Colorado.
The Tamale Act, she says, making for a very exciting time in the industry. Home cooks now have a wider variety of food they can make at home and aren't required to make it in a commercial kitchen. When the bill was signed, State Representative Monica Duran, who sponsored the bill, spoke to the economic impact as well.
It was about opportunity. It's about culture. And it's about creating pathways for hardworking Coloradans to be successful.
Gonzalez agrees.
It's really like running a small business out of your house.
The bill also expands the cap on what someone can make selling homemade food in a year, up from $10,000 to $150,000. Gonzalez says this is huge for people hit hard by the current economy to be able to grow, hopefully from their homes to a food truck and beyond.
They're having to do more than one job, and this really opens the doors of more financial sustainability for them.
She hopes this is only the beginning for Colorado's push towards easing regulations for small business.
We need to support local businesses. We need to support neighborhood businesses and really ensure that Colorado has a place very close to the top best places to do businesses, especially in food.
And is excited the Latino community will be able to share more of what they love.
To be able to cook and share our culture through a traditional dish and additionally be able to make money, I think it's a win-win.
The bill requires that anyone selling those homemade goods go through a food safety course and also maintain the proof that they've done so. Adelante wants to make sure you get connected to those resources, and Gonzalez says you can reach out for a free consultation through their website at any time. Reporting in Denver, Nate Belt, Fox 31.
And don't forget, you can stay up to date on all things trending across the border on your commute home. Maybe you're taking the dog out for a walk, or maybe you're getting a workout in the gym as Border Report Live brings you expert insights, voices, and more from both sides of the border. You can listen to us in audio form on any of the podcast apps at the bottom there of your screen. That's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.